January 6th committee has released its final report on Donald Trump's attempted coup. But just a few days from now, a new Republican majority will take control of the House, and they are already signaling they'll be using their newfound authority to, well, change the subject, pushing endless investigations into their political enemies, including the president's son, including the January 6th committee itself. So how will Democrats keep the focus on actual misconduct once they are the minority party? That's what Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland will be dealing with when he becomes the top Democrat on the House Oversight Committee next year. I want to ask you about how you see your role as the ranking member on the Oversight Committee, which is going to be a very interesting place in just a few days. But before we get to that, I want to ask one last question about the committee's report and a criticism I've seen some people raise of it. There were some staffers who complained to the press that there was such a singular focus on the culpability of Donald Trump that some of the full picture was left out, particularly not enough attention paid to intelligence failures, law enforcement mistakes that may have facilitated the penetration of the Capitol that day, of other members of the Republican Party, that essentially it was steered so monomaniacally towards Donald Trump, it ends up not giving a complete picture, even though that complete picture was the committee's brief. What do you say to that criticism?
I see where they're coming from. Look, we had a very clear and compelling and overwhelming narrative about how this happened. The bottom line is, if Donald Trump had accepted the election results in 2020, none of that would have happened. Nobody's claiming there would have been mob violence. Nobody's claiming there would have been all of these attempted coups against the Department of Justice, against the state legislatures, against state election officials like Brad Raffensperger. Donald Trump was the driver there, which is why it made such a riveting story to tell to the country, and the country gets that. Well, the failure of law enforcement and the national security entities to discern what was about to take place, prepare for it, and stop it is a far more complicated and variegated story. Now, if you read into the appendices, as I hope people will, you will find lots of pages about that, and people are going to have to draw their own conclusions. I mean, my own thought is that if you have a president who has essentially positioned himself outside of the constitutional order and is trying to overthrow an election and shut down the lawful processes of democracy, it's going to be very hard to get any of these entities, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, to take a strong stand against him. And that's fundamentally what we were up against. But I don't think there's any kind of a whitewash going on. I think it's just a very complicated story, and people should read into it and make a judgment for themselves.
Yeah, I'll just note that I think the 2022 elections and the aftermath of it give some credence to the notion that the but-for cause of all of this was Donald Trump himself, right? Because we didn't see anything like this when he was removed from the picture. We had a few people who kind of whined and said they lost to Kari Lake in Arizona, but by and large, the normal functioning of democracy happened in the absence of him as a candidate. I want to ask about your role as the new ranking member of House Oversight, which is going to be chaired by James Comer, who's already announced it's going to be the Hunter Biden show over at Oversight. How do you see your role? What do you expect that committee to look like under Republican gavel in just a few days?
The proper role of the Oversight Committee is to make sure that the laws and the programs adopted by Congress are actually meeting their goals and translating into on-the-ground positive results for the American people. And so we have a lot of work we really could be doing and should be doing about the Infrastructure Act. For example, is all of the money getting there to build the bridges and the roads and the highways and making sure that we have broadband in the rural areas and so on? That's what we should be doing. We should be doing the same thing in terms of health care and prescription drugs. Are we really limiting to $30 a month what people with diabetes are paying for their insulin shots? So we should be making sure that the legislative frameworks that we set out, and we passed some great laws in the last Congress, are translating. Well, I hope that my friend Jamie Comer, who shares a first name nickname with me, will want to focus on that. And I think there's some things that we can do together. To the extent that they wander off and just go into faux scandals of the jour and conspiracy theories and disinformation and propaganda, our role as the Democratic team will be to act as America's truth squad. We will have to counter all of the disinformation and propaganda and use the laws of evidence and reality and logic to debunk and refute what they're saying, and then to explain what government really ought to be doing now.
There was some news from your office today that was announced via a statement reported in the press about a diagnosis you recently received of a serious but treatable form of cancer, lymphoma. When did you get this diagnosis? How are you feeling, and how are the next few months looking for you?
Well, I've had a battery of tests over the last several days, and it looks like it's 100% certain now that I do have this large B-cell lymphoma, which is a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, as I understand it. It's very serious and it's aggressive. But the great news is that because of all of the investments we've been making in medical research and science and technology, that it's very treatable, and we're getting it early enough that if I take well to the chemotherapy, which starts this week, and I go through all of my 6 sessions, then I'll be in good shape. And I'm very grateful and thankful for that. And I have an amazing staff and great constituents and a loving family and friends. And so it is totally my plan, Chris, to make it through this thing.
Well, we are, of course, rooting for you and sending you our best. And I just want to say this time of year, you know, you've written incredibly movingly about your son, Tommy. You lost just about 2 years ago, and he's in our thoughts as well, and all the people out there this time of year battling depression. We're thinking of them as well, and I know it's something that's front of mind for you. So we're all pulling for you, and thank you so much for taking time, Congressman. Really means a lot.
It was wonderful being with you.